There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 44 of the Star Wars Canon Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Miller, and I'm so glad you've decided to join me to talk about our favorite thing in the world, yet again, Star Wars. I've got my Boba Fett sippy cup full of liquid to keep us going for the night, and with me I've got a very good friend of mine and somebody you guys know and love. I've got the one and only Mr. Richard J. How's it going, Jay?
Hello, everyone. Brian, it's great to be here again. My favorite day of the week. It is Star Wars Day, and today I sit here with my daughter's Toy Story flask, and I'm here to talk Yub Nub.
Yub Nub. Yes, we've got, dude, we don't have a lot to talk about this week, but what we do have to talk about, I'm excited to talk about. We've got a few mailbag questions and a couple, I don't want to say a couple of news stories, but we've got a news story I guess we could kind of go over, and a couple of upcoming canon things that we can kind of discuss a little bit. So it's probably not going to be a very long episode this week. We're trying to shoot for more of a 45-minute, hour-long kind of show from now on, trying to downsize it a bit, unless we have something big come along and a big special show or something like that. So trying to aim for a little more manageable length. So before we get into talking about the one news story that we wanted to cover, I wanted to talk a little bit about the website real quick. Star Wars Canon. What did we come up with, Jay? Was it SWCanonPodcast.com? Is that what we agreed on?
Well, yeah, so we got Star Wars Canon Podcast.com. You could SWCP for short, or SWCanonPodcast.com.
That's fair. So yeah, we're working on a new website. So for those of you that had the mobile app on an Android device, you guys know that mobile app has been taken down. It's nothing that, we didn't get in trouble for anything or anything like that. It's just very expensive to maintain. So the app came down and we kind of all got together and decided to have a meeting, and we decided that a website would probably be the better route to take. So we have more functionality with a website, more things we can do with it. And we can set up the mobile version of it to act just like the mobile app. So it's going to be like a tenth of the price. It's going to be a lot easier to maintain for us. So that's the route we're going to be taking. So the website will have everything that the old Star Wars Canon Library.com had, plus a little bit more functionality and a couple extra little things that we're going to be adding on. For those of you who are Legends fans, you're going to be very happy because we're going to be adding a whole section to this website just for Legends fans. One of the things I like to try to promote with this channel and with this podcast is that all Star Wars fans' opinions matter, unless you're bullying actresses and shit like that. So I want the website to be a place where Legends fans and Canon fans alike can come together and talk about, the universe that we all love. So that's kind of where we're going with the website. So like I said, I think on the announcement video for the app coming down, I don't know when the site's going to go live. It's in production right now. We're working on it and putting it together now. So honestly, it sounds like it's far out, but it's not that far out if you really think about the grand scheme of things. I'm shooting to have it out before the end of the year. With everything else going on with my day job and doing the podcast and game nights and everything like that, it's kind of difficult once in a while to find time to work on it. So I'm shooting to have it out by the end of the year. So very, very excited about that. So with that all out of the way, let's talk about the one news story that we kind of had lined up. Jay, Mando was nominated for the Best Drama Series at the WGA Awards. Does this surprise you at all, man?
Not really, no. I mean, I'm looking at some of the other nominations. We're all familiar with the TV show Breaking Bad, one of the best shows that's come out, for quite some considerable time. I think it's a great show. So, wasn't a big fan of the prequel series Better Call Saul. That's up for a nomination for the best drama. But I mean, come on. the final scenes of season 2 of The Mandalorian, I think it's a foregone conclusion. I think the emotional outcry over the appearance of Luke Skywalker would bag it in the net as a drama series without taking into consideration all the great stuff we had during the show itself, whether it's the whole crate dragon from the very beginning of season 2, all the way up to Grogu getting kidnapped, to Bill Burr's amazing portrayal as Miggs Mayfield when he takes out the Imperial officer, was a highlight of the season for many people, especially for that character after a lukewarm reception for Bill Burr in season 1. But yeah, I'm fingers crossed for Mandalorian, but I can't really complain too much if Better Call Saul takes the win as well. It is a very popular show, although it's not one I've really given enough time to. Maybe I should go back and watch it more. I did enjoy Breaking Bad, and I also enjoyed the subsequent movie on Netflix. So it's probably something I would also enjoy. But yeah, fingers crossed we can bag another award for Mandalorian.
I'm not really surprised either, and I think you hit the nail on the head too. It's not just the Luke Skywalker thing at the end. I mean, that was for Star Wars fans, that was the big cherry on top of an already great season of The Mandalorian. And one of the great things, and I think you brought it up, one of the great things about Mandalorian is that it carries its own weight. You don't have to, season 1 showed this. You don't have to put all these extra characters in that we've seen from other mediums. The show still carries its own. You don't. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's great seeing Ahsoka. It's great seeing Bo-Katan. It's amazing seeing Luke Skywalker. It's cool seeing all these characters pop up. But think back to season 1 and Boba Fett, obviously. But when you think back to season 1, and it was still its own thing at first, and it didn't have all these other big names coming in to kind of help support it, it was still holding its own very well. It was still an amazing show, not just for Star Wars fans. And it's a great entry point for new fans coming into Star Wars. And yeah, like I said, it doesn't surprise me at all. You brought up the exact example that I was going to use, the Bill Burr scene from season 2, when he's sitting across from the Imperial officer. And dare I say, I might get lynched for this. Actually, I may not. I feel like there was more character development there for a defected stormtrooper with Bill Burr than there was for Finn and the entire sequel trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue the case. What Bill Burr was given to work with for that scene, which shocked a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was just his delivery of the scene. I know Bill Burr as a stand-up comic, and and so do many other people primarily.
I love Bill Burr.
And also is his Netflix show, F is for Family, which is an amazing show on Netflix. Which is unfortunately, due to the COVID crunch, it's coming now into its final season, and they're going to X the show after that. But with Finn, I feel for John Boyega here. His criticisms were right.
Yeah.
He had all the tools given to him, and he was just let down by the writing team. The guy can act. I've been following this guy's work as an actor since he was 15. In a film called Attack the Block, which is just an independent. It's the movie over here. I don't know if something that would have been over in the US. It was all based in urban streets, in London city itself. So I don't think it would have been a film that would have made it, to the US. I think it might have just been a small independent movie. And it was a film. He plays a character who's 13 years of age. You only know the age at the end of the movie when he tells you that he's 13. But the movie's basically an alien invasion of these furry, almost like critters. You remember the 80s movies?
Oh,
Critters?
yeah, I remember Critters. My dad wasn't even big on sci-fi, and he loved Critters.
Yeah, I mean, it's like these slash critters / mutant Yogi Bears. They just storming this tower block in London. And that's it. That's the entire movie. Just them trying to escape from these mutant bears, these alien critter bears that are just storming the tower block in London. But I think as well, something to consider with The Mandalorian getting, nominated for this award. you got a show where the main character very rarely even takes his own helmet off.
Mm-hmm.
I know, obviously, throughout the second season, we saw his face more often as the story progressed, but primarily this show is about this guy who doesn't take his helmet off. So it's going to be hard for him, for the show to win the award. I was just checking here, the third nomination, that name escaped me earlier, is Amazon's The Boys. Now, I don't know if any of you have, any of our listeners have ever seen The Boys on Amazon. It is by far the funniest superhero or comic hero TV show I have ever seen. It is hilarious. It's not safe for work. It is absolutely, definitely not for children. But, it is one of the funniest shows that I've seen in a good number of years. I wouldn't be surprised if that took the prize for drama, because there is touches on some really nasty, heavy things in The Boys. I won't say any more. If you've not seen it, go and watch it. You'll understand it, so I'm not going to spoil it. But yeah, The Boys, Better Call Saul, and Mandalorian are all up for the Best Drama Award.
See, I think somebody on the game night told me I needed to start watching The Boys, and I haven't got around to it yet. I need to. But I've heard a lot of good things about The Boys.
It's repugnant.
That's what I've heard. I've seen some clips. I've seen some little, nuggets of things that happen. Nothing. It's all completely out of context for me. So I don't feel like any of it's spoilery. It might be. I don't even know. But anyway, I need to start watching it. And like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if it takes it, just based off of what I've heard about it. But one more thing I wanted to talk about The Mandalorian. You brought it up. It's about a character that never takes his mask off, and acting that way. I mean, from what I've heard from interviews and actors talking about stuff like that, that's got to be incredibly difficult to be able to portray all these emotions without your face being seen. And Mando does it perfectly. You know what I'm saying? Every time he looks at Grogu, you can just see that kind of fatherly love, and you can't even see his face. I do remember leaning over and telling Kirsty, though, after the season 2 finale, I told her, look, I totally get him taking his helmet off at the end of season 1 and at that one point in season 2 before, right, when the one episode that didn't have Grogu in it. And I told her that's awesome. I totally get why they did it. But now that we have finished season 2, looking back at everything, I feel, and this is just me, I feel like it could have been really impactful had they never shown his face in season 1 or halfway through season 2, and that the audience saw his face for the first time with Grogu. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, it's just now that we've finished the season is why I'm looking back, and hindsight's always 20/20. I just feel like it would have been really impactful. But you're right, it's incredible how much emotion can come through on somebody whose face is always covered, whose main character is always covered, and even in these last 2 seasons, the character progression that he's gone through, from this stone cold, I can bring you in warm or I can bring you in cold bounty hunter, to giving up Grogu, saying I will see you again, I promise, and almost shedding a tear over it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
I think the thing to take away from the episode between Din and Miggs, when he takes his helmet off there, it lends itself to Miggs Mayfield's story arc.
It does.
All right. So, where Miggs states to him, I didn't see your face. And he hands him the helmet back. I didn't see your face. So that, while it would be more impactful, certainly, for the viewer to not see Din Djarin until the final episode of season 2, I think if we took that episode and changed it so Miggs never saw the Mando's face,
right,
it would. Miggs would still get over with the fans. The fact that he blew that Imperial officer to pieces and then just kicked off a firestorm in the middle of the camp, in the middle of the officers' mess.
The guy with the tray just stops.
He still would have gone over, all right, with the fans. But I think it lends itself more on a personal, on more of an emotional level by saying, I understand what that meant to you. So I'm going to tell everyone that I never saw your face. So it lends itself to his character progression instead of Din Djarin's character progression. So
I agree. No, actually, I do agree with you. I think you just changed my mind on it. To be honest, I'm not kidding. You have a great point there, because Mayfeld he's kind of done a little more extreme. He's kind of done the Han Solo arc that Han had in 3 movies, but summed up in 2 episodes. Just that quickly, going from that scoundrel to just instantly, being honorable and actually caring about something other than, him. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So yeah, I completely agree with you. I totally get that. Yeah, it's on a very personal level with Mayfeld, and you're right. I think. Do I feel like they could have maybe done it where the audience didn't see his face, but Mayfeld still did? Yeah, but I don't think it would have been nearly as impactful on Mayfeld's character had they done it that way. Because even that whole conversation, seeing the look on Din Djarin's face during that conversation and everything, you're right. Yeah, no, you're completely right. I think you sold me on it. Good job, Jay. Not many people can change my mind, and you just did it. Good job, man. Proud of you. Well, that's really the only news story we really had for this week. It's kind of a slow news cycle, which is okay. I mean, it is what it is. We have other stuff to talk about. We got some upcoming canon that we kind of wanted to bring to the forefront. Next week on the 10th, I think it is, Darth Vader number 10 is going to be coming out, a comic book from Marvel. Jay, are you caught up on the Vader run?
I am, yes. I am caught up on the Vader run. We do have, first of all, on Tuesday the 9th, we do have Star Wars Insider 200, published by Titan Magazines.
Oh, yeah.
But in terms of, canon material, there may be short stories in the Insider magazines. There usually is. But in terms of a dedicated canon material, yes, as you said, the next one is Darth Vader issue 10, Into the Fire, part 5. Wednesday the 10th. Now, I don't know how many of the listeners here keep up to date with the comics, so I don't really want to talk spoilers, heavy spoilers, but basically, yeah, Vader has been sent on I suppose you could say, a quest from Palpatine, and basically to try to rediscover himself. And it's really heating up. There's been some great issues over the last few weeks and months of these comic books, and it's really took a sharp turn at the end of the last issue. So I'm looking forward to see next week where we go, because this run, I think, is due to end very soon. I don't think there's many more planned or announced of these runs.
I think the last issue I read was 8. I'm going to pick up 9. We're recording this Friday. It's being released on Saturday. So Saturday, the day this comes out, I'm going to pick up my pull file. And I'll be getting it tomorrow night and catching up. But yeah, this Vader run, and it's really cool because without giving too much away, because like Jay said, I don't want to give any spoilers away. So far with this comic run, every Vader run has been very different. It's been a very different Vader in every single run, basically because of where the comic takes place. The first Vader run was between A New Hope and Empire, so it was a seasoned Vader who had been Vader for a while. You know what I'm saying? And in the second Vader run, it was basically what I call Vader Year 1, where it was right after Revenge of the Sith. He was still learning how to be Vader. He was still getting used to the mechanical limbs and the teachings of the Sith and coming to terms with Padme's death and stuff like that. This comic run deals with his time between Empire and Jedi. So he's already had his confrontation with Luke, and Luke gave him the finger and decided to jump to his death instead. And
Luke gave him the finger,
Luke gave him the finger with his one good hand. Yeah. Luke gave him the finger, and now Vader has basically been, like you said, given this quest by the Emperor to rediscover himself through fear. And the way it's going through is just absolutely amazing. But what's really cool about this comic is, if you look at Vader from Empire Strikes Back to Vader from Return of the Jedi, Vader in Empire was straight, come with me, together we will rule the galaxy, we'll destroy the Emperor. And then when you come to Return of the Jedi, it's, I must obey my master. I have to take you before him. It's too late for me. Obi-Wan once thought as you did. It's two very different Darth Vaders, and nobody really ever questioned why that change was there in the films.
Whoa. I told you that last week, you bloody cheat.
You did. No, you did. You totally did. You, like I said, you opened my eyes to it. But this...
Is that why you didn't put the podcast out on Apple?
No. For those of you that don't know, yeah, I'm dropping episode 43 the same night as this one because I messed up and forgot to upload it. Sorry, guys. Like I said, I've got a lot on my plate in my personal life. But anyway, no, this Vader run is really covering that, and it's really explaining why there's that big difference there. You know what I'm saying? And it's a blast to read so far. I can't wait to pick up issue 9 tomorrow night and read it. And I may make another trip to Wichita next weekend so I can get 10 just so I can get caught up on it. But I'm really digging it, man. Absolutely loving the crap out of it.
It's phenomenal. The artwork in it is absolutely impeccable. Without going into too much detail on the most recent issues, you know, I'm assuming that the majority of people...
It is very clean artwork now that you say that.
You know, I would like to have assumed that those who are reading the comics have at least read some of the first few novels of the first few parts of Into the Fire, and when you just see Vader going up against the Emperor, and the Emperor just brutalizes Vader, rips his limbs off, and dumps him on the next to the river of lava on Mustafar where he was found. It's a phenomenal read, and it really does kind of give you, like you just said, it gives you more insight. So I know Christian Harloff has mentioned countless times before when they talk about the Vader and Obi-Wan, you know, in A New Hope, when I left you as but the learner, now I am the master. And there's always been that debate between the fans, okay, well, you can't meet Obi-Wan before episode 4 because it doesn't coincide there. Christian Harloff has always countered and said, okay, well, what about this very scene in Return of the Jedi where they're on the catwalk on Endor, on the landing platform, and he brings up this very same conversation. And it's something that I've agreed with Christian with on multiple times in the past when he said this. And, you know, this comic, it's great. It also gives more insight to the second part, the first part of the conversation that Luke and Vader have in Return of the Jedi on the catwalk before Luke asks Vader to come with him. This gives you all the information that you could possibly need. It fills in everything. I think it's a brilliant comic run. Out of all the canon comics to date that I've either read or I've seen people stream, this is my favorite comic run. I didn't read many of the comics in the Legends series. By the time I got into Legends, there was way too many comics for me to get involved with. I've read some of the Dark Empire comics, but as far as Star Wars comics go, for me personally, this is the best run of comics I have ever seen.
I agree. This is, out of all the Vader runs too, I think this is my favorite one, which is weird because I don't think it, maybe it did. I don't remember if it was number 1 on my canon ranking list of 2020 or not. I need to go back and look, actually. I don't even know what my own ranking is. How sad is that? But yeah, no, it's up there. I think this is a damn good comic. And honestly, I don't label a lot of canon as essential reading. There is canon that I believe is essential reading for people who maybe only watch the films, but this comic I think is essential reading. I really want to say that it is because I mean it's so good. It's so good. And if I'm not mistaken, this was the comic too. I believe it was this Vader run. We finally got a canon version of Vader visiting Padme's tomb.
Yeah,
you know, and stuff like that. And we got the return of Sabe.
Yeah,
the Queen's Shadow.
One, yeah.
A lot of references to the Queen's Shadow, Queen's Peril novels. And that was a cool twist too. I mean, that entire subplot, you know, of what was going on with her, that was an amazing story as well. But yeah, this new story, this one where Palpatine just threw Anakin back, said, "You wouldn't be where you are without me. Do it yourself." You know. And then we also got Ochi. You know what I'm saying? We've got Ochi, the Sith Hunter. Yeah, he's in this. absolutely awesome little throwbacks, and definitely a comic I think everybody needs to pick up. So, yeah, issue number 10 is out on February 10th. The other thing that I kind of wanted to mention real quick, and Jay, I think you said this is called the Age of Resistance book trilogy. Is that what it is? Because I think it's young adult books of the sequel trilogy. All three of them are coming out on the 9th. Is that what this is?
Yeah, so with the 9th, let's have a little look now. I've got my list here. So the Age of Resistance, the 9th of March. So the 9th of March, we got a hardback magazine book published by Titan Magazines, The Ultimate Journey Through the Productions of The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker, with exclusive interviews with the cast and crew that brought you the story of Rey, Finn, and Poe, and their struggle against Kylo Ren and the dark forces of the First Order. There's also on the 3rd of March, there's a junior graphic novel, The Rise of Skywalker. So that's something I may look into picking up. I do like the artwork for the graphic novels, and that's due to come out on the 3rd of March.
See, I didn't know there was a graphic novel for Rise of Skywalker coming, which actually kind of surprises me since Marvel canceled their comic run of Rise of Skywalker. And said that's never coming, which is going to drive me absolutely nuts, having comic runs of Force Awakens and Last Jedi, but no Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of surprising that they're still doing that. I actually kind of want to pick that up just so I have some form of a graphic novel or something for Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, it's been published by IDW, so they've been publishing the Star Wars adventure books. The younger, they are like kind of like graphic children's comic books, very younger, very stylized artwork, you know. But yeah, The Rise of Skywalker, a junior graphic novel, is due out for release in the US on the 3rd of March.
Well, there you go, guys. Upcoming canon. And for those of you who, you know, want to really keep up with upcoming canon, there is going to be a segment on the website that I mentioned earlier, SWCanonPodcast.com. There's going to be a whole page in there for upcoming canon. Jay actually put together a list the other day of everything that has been announced so far for the year and its dates, and put all that together too. So we're going to have a page on there too where you guys can go through, check out everything that's upcoming. And you guys just don't have to listen to it from us. You can check out the website and know exactly when everything's coming out, so you don't miss an issue of a comic, don't miss a book that's coming out, anything like that. So that's going to do it for upcoming canon, guys. We've got some mailbag questions too. So how do you guys get a question on the Star Wars Canon Podcast? You can email it to us at starwarscanonpodcast@gmail.com. You can message us on Facebook, on our Facebook page, or you can send a voice message through anchor.fm/Star Wars Canon Podcast. And we may even play your question right here on the show. So like I said, we've got 5 questions lined up this week. Let's get into this. Question number 1 comes from Jimmy Sparks. And Jimmy says, "Hey, Brian and crew, maybe you've already talked about this, but I just got done reading Ahsoka and am a bit confused on the Kyber Crystal color changing thing. Could you elaborate? And how is this different from the EU Kyber Crystals? Thank you in advance." Thanks for the question, Jimmy. So first off, yeah, Ahsoka has introduced, and I think this was when they first introduced it, wasn't it, Jay? The color changing?
I believe so. Yeah, I think this novel came before the comic book where the Empire would be bleeding lightsabers.
Right.
So I think this one came first, yeah.
Okay. So basically what's going on with this in the novel Ahsoka, which has been out a while, so I mean we can talk about the book a little bit. Ahsoka, we know Ahsoka from Rebels has got white lightsabers, which we'd never seen white lightsabers before in canon anyway. And we learned that she got those from an Inquisitor's lightsaber that had already, you know, been read, and she basically used the Force to purify them, which is why they're white. This is a little bit different from what Kyber crystals were in the EU, because Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, I think weren't Kyber crystals in the EU infused with the Force? Weren't they crystals that you could infuse with the Force and give somebody Force powers?
Yeah, so in the EU, you had Kyber crystals that were much like they are in canon, crystals that are attuned to the Force. The only difference in canon is that all Kyber crystals, when you see them in the temples on Ilum, they're all blue. In EU, they were various different colours. Also, with the EU, with Kyber crystals, you would literally just pick your colour, slot it into the lightsaber. That was it. So if you picked up a yellow crystal, you had a yellow blade. But with EU as well, there was also other crystals that you could use outside of Kyber crystals. Now, those of you who played Knights of the Old Republic would be very familiar with the Krayt Dragon Pearl. Those who have read the Bane trilogy would be familiar with Bane's Heart, which is the crystal given to Darth Zana by Darth Bane. And, you know, there's another one as well from Star Wars Galaxy's Empire Divided. It's called Bass's Wisdom. It was a navy blue blade that would emit frostbite. So not only was it a color,
Damn.
it also had a property. So you could actually give people frostbite by being in close proximity to the blade.
See, I didn't know that was a thing in EU. I didn't even know that you could. Where did you say that blue one was? The frostbite one?
Star Wars Galaxy's Empire Divided. That's
cool. I mean, that is something that I think is. I mean, I never knew about that. I'm just learning this for the first time. I didn't know that was a thing in EU. And that's. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys think that's stupid, but I think that's freaking badass.
There's pages upon pages of different things that you can use, or at least in the EU, that were used in place or in conjunction with Kyber crystals to adapt the power of the saber. We were talking recently before the stream, before the recording. There's a crystal in Knights of the Old Republic. I believe it's the second one, but if I'm wrong, guys, let me know down below in the comment section. And you only had to be a dark side user to use it. You couldn't use it if you were too in tune with the light side of the Force. It's a red crystal which you put in your lightsaber, and it massively increases the damage, on your lightsaber. Also, another point to note to you as well, Jim, that in the old EU there was no such thing as a red Kyber crystal. Red Kyber crystals were created by the Sith.
They were synthetic,
crystal.
yeah.
That's it, synthetic crystals. But in terms of the canon so far, it's all about bonding with your crystal in the Force. So that crystal will become attuned to you, and then the Force would dictate to you what color your blade would be.
Isn't that why? Spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen season 7 of Clone Wars. Isn't that why Ahsoka's sabers were blue? And season 7 was basically because Anakin had tinkered with them and toyed with them, and had messed with them enough that the crystals themselves turned blue because, I mean, it was Anakin. He even made the comment, maybe they're a little better than they were before.
That was my thoughts behind it. I didn't question it any further than that, because that is exactly what I just assumed, given what we do know in canon of the actions of a Kyber crystal. I just took that as, okay, yeah, that happened. That's why they're blue. So it never really dawned on me if there was any other possibility. I just took it and ran with it.
So basically it means at this point in canon, you don't get to pick your color. It just kind of, it becomes the color of whatever reflects your personality, your type of Jedi, and your connection to the Force. Am I summing it up right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Also in the old EU, there were occasions where the lightsaber color would be a position or a rank or a specialty. So, for example, if you were a consular Jedi like Qui-Gon or like Luke, somebody who was not necessarily Luke in the old EU, someone who was not necessarily focused on combat, somebody who was more in tune with the cosmic force, then you were a consular Jedi, you'd have a green crystal. If you were a Jedi Guardian, in other words, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, two people forged on the battlefield, you were given a blue crystal. So there were occasions where it would be dictated on specialty, so you would get given crystals based on what you are proficient in. There are other instances where you would go to a cave, pick out a crystal that would physically call to you, much like they do in canon. They could be various colours. Didn't necessarily have to do anything to do with your specialty. Just certain crystals would call to you, which was considered rare in the old EU, because in the old EU you would literally just walk into any cave and just pick out a crystal, and that would do you. There was no test like it is in canon. In the Clone Wars episode where the children go to the temple on Ilum and are tested when getting their crystals, there was none of that in the EU.
Honestly, though, having that as canon now, it does make building lightsabers for non-Force users extremely difficult. It's something that, you know, if you have to have the Kyber Crystal to make a lightsaber work, it makes finding a lightsaber, or a non-Force user getting their hands on a lightsaber incredibly difficult.
Oh yeah, it could be fatal.
Yeah,
I mean, you look at Kylo, the canon depiction, the canon reason for Kylo's warped blade. He wasn't. Snoke said himself, "You're unbalanced." He wasn't focused when he created his red lightsaber, and as a result, he cracked his crystal. Now, one thing that they don't explain in the movie, but you can read in the novel, The Force Awakens, is that every time Kylo switches that blade on, he risks having the lightsaber blow up in his face.
Yep. That's kind of a cool aspect, honestly. If you really, I don't want to say it's a cool aspect, but it's kind of a nice, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a nice variable to add to an already off his rocker character. You know what I mean? Like you said, an unbalanced character. I think it's an awesome dynamic to add to that.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's badass. I think it's absolutely badass. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely cool.
It would be nice to have seen that in the movie, so other people who don't read the novels could also pick up and learn that as well. Right.
Yeah, because I remember a lot of people were arguing whether or not those were vents on the side of his saber, which I think it turns out that's what they are vents for the excess energy. And then, or if it was, purposefully put there as, like it actually had a purpose and a function. But no, it was just because of the crystal being damaged the way it was, and it needed somewhere to vent that extra exhaust, and that's all it was. Technically, it wasn't even a crossguard saber. It's not even a blade that's coming out there. It's just that extra pure energy that's coming. It's not even focused. It's just, basically big torch blades is all it is. Torch flames. So
yeah, it's just raw power.
Yeah,
which kind of fits in with what Kylo's character is. He's just raw power.
Yeah, and what he wants.
That's it. It's much like Anakin. Remember in Attack of the Clones that Obi-Wan had said that. Was it Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith? With Anakin, when Obi-Wan had turned to Mace and said, his abilities have made him arrogant. I think it was
Attack of the Clones. Yeah.
Yeah, Attack of the Clones. Yeah, Anakin knows he's a badass, so he doesn't train.
Right.
Because it's natural to him. He's got this raw power, and we see that in Kylo. Luke explains that to us when he sees it in Rey. I've seen this kind of strength, kind of power only once before. It didn't scare me then. It does now.
Yeah.
So we know he's just raw power, just untapped raw potential.
Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense having a saber reflect that too, and having a crystal that reflects that, even though it's not his crystal. You know what I'm saying? But it still reflects him as a broken individual, also. And I think it's absolutely awesome that kind of. I don't even think that was on purpose, honestly. It might have been. I don't know. I haven't seen anything to really show that that's what the correlation was, but that's really, really cool connection. So I hope that answers your question, Jimmy. Yeah, the color changing thing, I used to call it mood ring crystals because at first I wasn't a big fan of the idea, but it's kind of grown on me since then. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Jimmy. Thanks for sending it in, brother. Question number 2 this week comes from Nicholas Owen. And Nicholas says, hello, Star Wars Canon Podcast. Big fan here. Thank you guys for being a positive light in the fandom. It's something we desperately need. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. Nicholas says, I have a question. Was Sharut a Jedi, or did I miss something? It used to be only Jedi and Sith could use the Force. Has that changed? Love the show, guys. Keep it up. Jay, you want to take this one?
Okay, sure. Now, was Chirrut a Jedi? No. Simple answer. Chirrut was a warrior preacher of the Guardian of the Wills. Now, it's separate, but it's known to the Jedi. the way to kind of wrap your head around it is they're force sensitive, okay? And they have years and years and years of training, much like Buddhists are trying to achieve that echelon of enlightenment. Now, if you kind of cast your mind back to Empire Strikes Back, this is where Luke is leaving Dagobah, and Ben Kenobi pops up and appears to Luke. And Luke turns to Ben and says, I can feel the Force. And Ben turns to him and says, yeah, but you can't control it. So what we see Luke go through, where, you know, through that small period of his training, a Guardian of the Will could take their entire life to even get a fraction of where Luke is. Now, the Guardians, what they would do is safeguard pilgrims on their travel to the Temple of the Wills, which is why they are based in Jeddah. That's where one of the temples are, the Temple of the Wills. Now, in regards to the Jedi and the Sith, while the movies traditionally focus on Jedi and the Sith, even in canon, there are other sectors of Force users. You've got the Witches of Dathomir. Mm-hmm. You've got the Ancient Order of the Wills, the shamans who taught Yoda how to come back as a Force ghost. Now, collectively, this is within EU and in canon, there are 108 recognized Force categories. However, I would be remiss to not say that some of these categories are very similar. You've got the Legends version of the Falanasi. All right. Now, the Falanasi were a group of Force users who originally in the EU were the people that Luke and Leia's mother belonged to before Episode 1 even came out. In canon, they're also referenced in the sacred Jedi texts. And there's in Legends, what they would do is that they would have an ability where they could, or what they refer to as the Adepts of the White Current, which is basically another version of the Force. What they would do is they would set up an invisible barrier. Not sure if any of you have seen WandaVision, but if you have, you get the meaning. They would set up an invisible barrier so you could stand in a field, and that field could be empty. If you passed through that invisible barrier, you'd see a whole city. A whole city would appear before your eyes. They would mask their own existence, so very few people knew that they existed. Now, in canon, they have a similar trick, except instead of masking, they project. So there is, in the Jedi sacred texts, there is an ability called, I think it's Simul Futurus, and that is the ability to project one's presence over a distance. In other words, that's what Luke used at the end of The Last Jedi, to project himself across the galaxy. It's written in the sacred text. That is canon. But there are 108 recognized Force categories. But as I said, there are some that are more or less clones of each other with just slight differences. But traditionally in the movies, yeah, it is Jedi and Sith. But, you know, in canon and in EU, there's always been more than just that. The films focus purely on good versus evil for the sake of it being a children's movie. Mm-hmm. But the outer lore, the comics, the novels, the games, all of those expand on it greatly. And it's about 108 recognized groups.
See, I didn't even know that. But no, it kind of we've seen other characters that weren't Jedi or Sith using the Force in the films. Maz Kanata had a connection with the Force, you know, and she said, I'm no Jedi, but I know the Force. And there was even a deleted scene, and if I'm not mistaken, it was in the novel for Force Awakens also, where she uses the Force to pull the ceiling down. That's right. In the basement of the castle when the First Order attacks. And so it's not just Jedi and Sith. Those are the two that we focus on the most because, you know, they got the lightsabers and it just looks badass when they fight each other. But it's like Luke said in The Last Jedi, the Jedi were romanticized. That's what we're doing. We're romanticizing Jedi. You know what I mean? And Sith, because that's the ultimate ends of each end of the spectrum going at it. And it's cool and it's badass. And honestly, that's what sets Star Wars apart from other sci-fi series. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that other sci-fi series and franchises don't have. And it's really, really cool. So I don't see a problem having other people come in who can feel the Force, and like you said, Obi-Wan telling Luke, but you cannot control it, and yeah, I think it's absolutely cool. And even Baze Malbus says there are no Jedi here anymore, just fools like him, and that's all it was. Should they have made him a Jedi? I think that'd have been badass. But yeah, no, I think it adds to the lore, honestly, that you've got people out there who were Force sensitive when they were born, but the Jedi just never found them, and the Jedi can't find everybody that's Force sensitive, so you've got people out there who are having these abilities and they just kind of go with it, like I said, Maz Kanata, who's been alive for over 1,000 years. Yeah, at some point, if she had a small connection to the Force, she's going to learn how to use it at some point, And yeah, so it's not just Jedi and Sith anymore. So basically, yeah, I don't think it's ever really changed either, because in EU, weren't there people that, I think you just said there were people that could use the Force in EU.
There's hundreds. Like I said, the big one for me was the Falanasi.
Yeah.
That was one of the first civilizations that I came across when I started to read the EU, before I decided to go back and do it in chronological order. And it was a very early 90s novel. Came out way before Phantom Menace, which is why Luke's and Leia's mother was originally, at least in the novels, was supposed to be a member of this civilization. Of course, Phantom Menace retconned all that, changed it up, so it's Padme Amidala of Naboo. But in the older year before the prequels came out, she was a member of this Falanasi civilization. I think as well, going off what you said about making Chirrut, yeah, it would be badass to see him a Jedi. The way I tend to look at things, we saw how cool Chirrut was in that movie. Lifetime worth of training, right? So, there were multiple moments in the movie where you could see him tapping into the Force, whether subconsciously or maybe consciously. Subconsciously, I'd like to think, where he fights all those stormtroopers when you first see him. He calls Andor a captain when they're captured by after the board
by the partisans.
Yeah, just after the Borg gullet scene, when the Death Star fires one of its reactors and the base starts to crumble, he calls out to Andor. He calls him Captain. Now in the novel, Andor takes a moment, steps back.
He notices it.
I was a captain. How did you know that? Again, you don't see that in the film. But then when we get to the very end, his final scene, where I think he finally is able to consciously connect and go with the Force. You've seen this movie. We've all seen it. I don't know how many times we've seen it. We all think Chirrut's a badass.
Yeah.
Now, he trained a lifetime for one moment in the Force. Now, when you go and watch things like the Clone Wars, you watch Anakin, Obi-Wan, Luke. If you then go with that, with the mindset that Chirrut spent a lifetime for one moment of consciously connecting to the Force, these people all have an innate ability to connect straight away. It elevates Luke, it elevates Leia, it elevates all the other Jedi. All right, because now you're seeing it from a different perspective, where you've seen a man train his entire life to have one moment of connectivity within the Force that he was consciously aware of.
That's right.
But we've all grown up. We're familiar. We know Jedi. That's what we grew up with.
Yeah.
Whether it's original trilogy, prequel trilogy, or sequel trilogy, it doesn't matter. We know Jedi, right? But when you take a step back and see it from the perspective of somebody that's trained for their entire life, to have one conscious moment with the Force, if you can look at it through that perspective, it elevates the Jedi to a more mythical standpoint. That these people, Luke had barely any training. He had to find his way himself to lift the lightsaber out of the snow on Hoth. And Sheriff Imwe spent his entire life training just so he could walk across a beach and flick a switch. He didn't pull any punch. He didn't pull anything towards him. He didn't use the Force to deflect blaster bolts. He just walked forward and was able to miss. The Force directed those blaster bolts elsewhere. But Luke, without barely any training, on his own, heir to the Jedi, was able to move the lightsaber out of the snow, and it elevates the Jedi just a little bit more in terms of how mythical and how powerful these people are.
Yeah,
because we've only ever seen them from as the standard, as the go-to. This is what a Jedi is. This is what I expect of all the heroes. No, now we're getting to see a bigger universe, all these other characters. Some of them are scoundrels, and you get these guardians of the worlds, people that spend their lives dedicated to this, and they maybe in rare cases have one in their entire life, one conscious connection to the Force. For me, when I look at it through that perspective, it elevates the Jedi that extra bit more for me. It elevates Yoda and Yoda's wisdom in Empire Strikes Back that little bit more for me, and that's how I choose to look at it.
Yeah, no, I think it's great that they've added more people in. You know what I'm saying? Because think about this also. I mean, there's who all in the galaxy had ever seen a Jedi? Hardly anybody had ever seen a Jedi. I mean, there were 10,000 Jedi at the time of the prequels, something like that. 10,000 Jedi to a galaxy of trillions and trillions and trillions of beings. Not everybody had ever seen a Jedi. They were a myth. You know what I mean? To most of the galaxy, probably. And then, you've got these little people, I don't want to say little people, but these people here and there, these just normal everyday people who have these abilities. And what are the odds of them being found? 10,000 Jedi going out to find trillions of people who are connected to the Force. And Yoda says it, the Force is created by all living things. It binds us and brings the galaxy together, holds the galaxy together. That's why wouldn't there be people in tune with that? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, nothing's really changed. It's just they've focused more now on the fact that it's not just Jedi and Sith. So
yeah. Well, look at Del Meeko, right?
Yeah.
Battlefront 2, that cutscene between him and Luke. Now, when you look at Del Meeko, it's pretty clear that this guy was alive before the Clone Wars, right? He doesn't look as if he's in his 20s.
Right.
The guy looks like he's in his late 30s, right? So by that point, I would at least think that he might have had he would have been alive to have seen Jedi actively around. Mm-hmm. Now, he lived on Coruscant. Based on what he said about hearing tales of the Jedi and how much they petrified him as a kid, living on Coruscant, he probably never even saw a Jedi either.
Yeah.
And by the time, maybe he got to that age when stories were being told, Revenge of the Sith onwards. Some of those stories that he might have been told might have been from before Order 66.
Right.
Some of the stories he might have had might have been before then. Just these mythical creatures like Krampus, like the evil Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Comes to take your kids away if your kids are being naughty.
Some of it could have been the Imperial propaganda too.
Yeah, I mean that it could be in relation to the Imperial propaganda, which to me would make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, Palpatine did say it, but it's not a far stretch to think that some of those conversations were being said before Order 66. Especially if you lived in some of the lower levels of Coruscant where the shady dealings were going down. You didn't want a Jedi coming around and busting up your crib.
Yeah.
But I definitely think, looking at Del, I don't know how old Del is, but looking at Del, I would believe that he was alive and probably fully aware before Order 66. I could be wrong. The guy could be in his, it was 19 between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. Then how many years have we got then between A New Hope and Return of the Jedi?
A New Hope and Return of the Jedi, I think there's 4 years there, if I'm not
It's 4 or
mistaken.
5.
Yeah.
So we got 19 for Revenge the Sith to A New Hope. We'll chuck down 4 for the original trilogy, plus another 5, even though we haven't hit the 5-year point. 5 is just the Battle of Jakku. So obviously at this point, it wouldn't have been a full 5 years yet because he was still with the Empire. That would have made him 28 at the oldest. Now, Del Meeko looks like he's knocking 40.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So he could have been 10 or 12,
I'm thinking Del Meeko would have been old enough to know the Jedi before Order 66. And
Right.
those stories still terrified him because, people didn't see a lot of Jedi on Coruscant. If you lived in the top elite levels, yeah, you probably saw them on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Especially if you were a senator or had access to the Senate chambers, or the Senate building. But your people who were on the streets, people down at District 1313, they wouldn't have liked the Jedi. They were too shady for that. They would have told the kids some really nasty stories.
Yeah.
Even before Order 66.
Yeah, no, you're right. So, I hope that answers your question. And yeah, I think it's great that there's more than just Jedi and Sith now. I really do. And there already was, but I think it's good that it's not just that exclusive club anymore. I really do. So thanks for sending in the question, Nick. Do appreciate it. Question number 3 this week comes from Toby Gardner. And Toby says, hello there, fellow nerds and keepers of the Force. I pose to you all this question. If you could change one plot point in any of the films or television shows, what would it be and why? Love to hear your opinions. I'll take this one first, Jay, because I know before we started recording, you said that was a really hard one to kind of nail down. I was jokingly saying that I would have stopped Padme from pulling Jar Jar's hand out of Anakin's pod racer and just let Anakin fire it up. And for why, I think that's obvious why. But no, to be serious, I feel like this would have really changed more than just stuff going forward. The end of The Last Jedi. Say what you will about Last Jedi. I think what would have been absolutely amazing was instead of seeing this broom kid scene at the end of Last Jedi, we basically see the entire first 4 minutes of Rise of Skywalker, and actually move that to the end of Last Jedi, so that by the time The Last Jedi came out, we'd know, oh, Palpatine's back, and then we got to wait 2 years to see how that's going to go down, because you could do that whole scene of Kylo saying, to Palpatine, I'll kill you. I've died before, and have that entire scene of him finding him on Exegol. And then ending it with Kylo saying, who is she? And then the Emperor smiling and boom, credits. And I think just moving, and it's not even changing a plot point, it's just moving it to somewhere else, I think would have really helped I think it would have saved an entire trilogy, at least in my opinion. I think it would have saved the entire trilogy. Jay, what do you think?
Well, I'm not sure about saving the trilogy, but for me, I'd have Obi-Wan killed off in Episode 1.
Episode 1.
I'd have Darth Maul kill Obi-Wan. Now, canon leader, educate me. In canon, has Qui-Gon had any other apprentices aside from Obi-Wan Kenobi and the potential apprentice he could have had in Anakin?
Not that I know of.
Okay, so let's just assume that for the time being in canon, Obi-Wan is his only apprentice. Now, Qui-Gon is very compassionate as far as Jedi go. He's a Jedi of old school. He's the Jedi that we are seeing now in High Republic. Now, for someone who wears their emotions so much on their skin, so close to the surface, what impact would Obi-Wan's death have on Qui-Gon? Because we all talk about, if Qui-Gon survived, then would Anakin go down that same path?
Right.
Well, put Anakin aside for a second. What path would have Qui-Gon taken? Would Qui-Gon see, okay, look, the Jedi, that ain't working? Because after Qui-Gon's death, Qui-Gon's master up and left. He left, Count Dooku left the Jedi Order and then took on the mantle of Darth Tyrannus. So I would be very intrigued to see where Qui-Gon's path would have taken him. would he acknowledge his own failings
Right.
as a teacher, and which led to the death of Obi-Wan Kenobi? Would he be detached from it completely? Would he turn really cold and then pass on that coldness to Anakin, or would he just wallow in self-doubt, pity, and ultimately become corrupted by those emotions that he held on to?
It's a good question. I mean, that's a good one. That's a damn good point. You could sit here all night and just pick. I mean, it didn't have to be anything big, like Alderaan being destroyed. It didn't have to be anything big. It'd just be something small. We've talked about a series of comics, which, by the way, I was gonna tell you this, Jay. This series of comics that we've talked about before, the Star Wars Infinities, where they take one, and none of these are canon, by the way. If you guys are listening to this, and you've never heard of this. This is not canon. These came out Dark Horse days. Star Wars Infinities, they would take one little thing and change it, and then kind of see where it went from there. And the one that really stood out in my mind was The Empire Strikes Back, because they did one for, I think, each of the three films, and they have all three of them at my comic shop in Wichita. So I'm going to see if I can pick them up tomorrow, all three of them, because those are a blast to read. But the one that sticks out to me is the Empire comic, because Luke basically dies on Dagobah. He freezes to death, or on Dagobah, on Hoth. I'm sorry, he dies on Hoth after Han finds him. Han finds him screaming, Yoda, Dagobah, all this stuff. And Luke doesn't make it through the night. And they pick up Han and Luke, and they go back to base. And Han decides to leave the rebellion and go to Dagobah to see what Luke was mumbling about. And Han ends up becoming a Jedi, training with Luke, if I remember, or with Yoda, if I remember right, if that's how that comic went. But I remember that series coming out, and I think it would be awesome to do something like that. We're getting a series already from Marvel saying, What If, called What If. Why can't we have Star Wars What If? And I mean, I think it'd be amazing to have something like that. We talk about what ifs all the time on this podcast. What if this had happened? What if they had done this? What if this person died and this person lived? I think it's a lot of fun to sit and talk about stuff like that. But the reason I picked that one scene, I'm trying, because you guys know I'm not a huge fan of the sequel films. I'm trying to come up with a way. I want to like those films so much, and having something like that happen for me, I think it would do a lot more good than it would. How am I trying to say this? I think it would redeem not necessarily the whole trilogy, but a lot of the trilogy in a lot of people's eyes. At least then it would have looked like they had a plan. You know what I'm saying? But honestly, if I had to pick one little plot point, it's going to be the Jar Jar thing. I'm just going to stick with it, because Padme not going over and taking Jar Jar's hand out of the pod racer and Anakin firing it up. We got no more Jar Jar. He's gone. And nobody to give Chancellor emergency powers. And you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no Gungan to manipulate or anything like that. And we get rid of one guy. So we get rid of somebody. So that's what I'm going with. I'm going to stick with the Jar Jar thing, personally, because I'm pretty happy with the way everything else turned out. But thanks for the question, Toby. Do appreciate it. Question number 4 this week comes from Jody Carson. And Jody says, I was wondering if the rule of 2 is still a thing in Star Wars, since Disney has introduced all of these other Sith assassins and Force users. Also, could you explain the rule of 2 and who started it? Love you guys. Okay, so first off, we have to fix something in this. Disney's not the one that's introduced all these Sith assassins and other Force users. That was George Lucas in Clone Wars. That was with I'm assuming you're talking about Asajj Ventress and the Dathomir witches and all that. That was all George Lucas. None of that was Disney. So it's not Disney that's introduced all that. But however, yes, the rule of 2 is still canon. It's mentioned in Phantom Menace when they're having the funeral for Qui-Gon, and Yoda and Mace Windu are talking, and they say, always 2 there are, no more, no less, a master and an apprentice, but which was destroyed, the master or the apprentice. Yes, that is still canon. Did it get blurred a little bit in the Clone Wars? Oh, hell yeah. It got blurred. Damn near broke the rule off. Instead of bending it, they damn near broke it off. But you also have to keep in mind, too, Sidious at one point, he knew about Asajj Ventress, but when he realized that Dooku might have been training her as a Sith, he told him kill her, get rid of her. That's a test of loyalty. Get rid of her. There can only be two of us, you know? And bringing Darth Maul back and the whole Savage thing, it's still canon, and even in the comics, hell, Palpatine has come up with several different Force users as tests to maybe replace Vader down the line. You know what I'm saying? So it's been blurred. The rules been bent a little bit, I think, but it's still canon. Jay, what do you think so far?
Okay, so in terms of the history of the Rule of Two, in the old EU, I'm surprised Brian didn't lead with this. This is his baby.
I know. I talk about it so much. I figured I'd let you do it this time.
Oh, thanks, Brian. I appreciate that. I'll send you a couple of dollars when this is over.
Aw.
So, going back thousands of years, all right, there was effectively, there was a Sith Council. Okay, many Sith, it was called the Brotherhood of Darkness. Now, these Sith, none of them could attain the rank of Darth. Okay, and the reason why is because if there was a Darth, there would be a leader, and the Brotherhood of Darkness would all fight, try and kill each other to get to that position, and all the infighting, which just basically crippled the Sith from the beginning. So Bane, sickened by this, of the Sith temple, where he went to the Sith temple to train with the Sith, and discovered in the temple libraries all these different scrolls and texts from ancient dead Sith Lords. And reading these texts, he was sick of what the Sith had become. So he destroyed all of the Sith with something called a mind bomb, and instilled the Rule of Two. So there would be one master and one apprentice. Now, as far as canon goes, it's not determined when this happened. It is determined, yet Bane had set this up, but it doesn't determine whether or not the sequence of events outlined in the books, the Rule of Two and the Bane trilogy, it doesn't canonize those books. So although Bane does set this up in canon, it's not yet been established how. Is it the same? I've had a little look, and it does state that it's to stop the infighting with the Sith, but it doesn't specifically state it's about the Brotherhood of Darkness. Now, moving on with what Brian said, with the assassins, Ventress, Ochia, Bestoon, all these are tools, Palpatine's tools, the Inquisitors. Now, all these Inquisitors are Force-sensitive, fallen Jedi, basically. Jedi who have been corrupted by the dark side. They're not adepts at the Sith. They've had some training within the dark side, but they've all had training in different elements. So one person could be quite adept at one specific task, but is not necessarily suited for any other task. Whereas a Sith Lord would be expected to be an adept in every single task. So basically, they're not a threat. So they don't become a threat to Palpatine. They're just nothing but tools to be used and discarded. And that's it.
Which I think that's why, if you guys have seen Clone Wars and the way Palpatine took out Savage Opress and Darth Maul, because remember you had the two Sith, you had Palpatine and Tyrannus, Dooku, essentially, but Tyrannus, and then you had Maul and Savage running around, who also claimed to be two of the Sith. And Palpatine nipped that in the ass quick. He hunted them down and nipped it in the ass. And I think that's because Palpatine realized they were a threat to him. They actually were a threat to him and his plan. Because, they were putting together crime syndicates. They were doing all kinds of stuff out in the open, not even behind the scenes the way Palpatine was, but just out in the open.
That's right, yeah. And he went there personally to silence them. Yeah.
And I think that's why Palpatine just completely went, I just God mode on him and was like, I've got uses for you, which we still don't know what those uses were. But it's, I think you're right. It all comes down to what was a threat to the master, because you had like you said, the master and the apprentice, one to embody the power and one to crave it. And that's what the Rule of Two always was. And I think this there were times where you're right. Palpatine really did his best to kind of bring, I don't want to use this term, but bring balance back to the rule of two, to restore the rule of two to where it was just him and his apprentice. But then at the same time, like you said, he was training these tools, like the cyborgs in the first Star Wars comic. And actually, he was training a new General Grievous too, but it was a Mon Cala, if I remember right, in the first Star Wars run or first Vader run, I think.
Well, the thing I like about Palpatine is if we take into consideration, right, well, you've just talked about the rule of two, one to wield the power, the other to crave it. Now, on that logic, right, I think that Palpatine is an absolutely piss-poor Sith Lord. And
I agree.
Because he purposely put Vader in a choke suit. That suit, in canon, has nails all in the underlining. So it causes Vader constant pain every time he walks. He puts the life support computer right on his chest, so it's there as a target spot. And it makes it easy for Palpatine to shock Vader and drop him to his knees. Now, as a Sith master, right, or, you're supposed to be the strongest rules. Palpatine purposely put a chokehold on Vader, so Vader could never, at least as far as Palpatine was concerned, would never be able to muster the strength in the Force to take out Palpatine because he's too busy focusing the Force on himself to keep him walking without wincing over in agony. Now, so for me personally, I think that if there was a council of Sith, much like there are Jedi that come back from the dead, like Luke, like Obi-Wan, like Yoda, I would like to see if a Sith does ever come back from the grave, and projects himself as a Force ghost, it would be nice to say, hey, what do you think of Palpatine? Is he a legitimate Sith, or is he a bit of a waste of time in your eyes? I'd like to see, from a Sith perspective, what their position is on Palpatine, because Palpatine is purposely putting his apprentice in a weakened position so his apprentice can never challenge him.
Yeah.
Now, going back to the previous going back to what we were talking about with the rule of two specifically, Bane, I'm not sure, Jody, if you've read these novels, but Bane gets pissed off with his apprentice because he gives his apprentice opportunity time and time and time again to kill him, and she doesn't, and he gets angry with her for not trying to kill him.
Yeah.
And he fights her all the time, punishes her because she doesn't go out of her way to kill him. She's not ready. She needs things to do first. He's like, nah, you're ready. Kill me. And she won't. She can't. Palpatine's not like that. Palpatine's not like, come on, Vader. It's time to kill me now. Because he knows that the restrictions he's put on Vader generally wouldn't be able to. Now, if you gave Vader a suit that didn't require his full concentration to operate, then yeah, we know Anakin or Vader would have obliterated Palpatine. Palpatine states that in Revenge of the Sith when he's fighting Yoda, that this kid could take both of us out at the same, could take both of us out. That's well established that, and even George said, Anakin is the beacon of light. But the restrictions he put on Vader was put on Vader purposely so Vader could never pose a threat to him as the Sith Master, which is not what being a Sith is all about. Palpatine is a fraud. Get him off the Sith Council. Get him off the Sith throne. He's a fraud. He's a fraud. Get him off.
Well, I hope that answers your question, Jody. And talking about those Bane books, man, for a second, because, Jay said a while ago, I love talking about the Bane books. I'm
not wrong, though. I'm not wrong. He's a fraud.
I absolutely adore those books. So even if you're just wanting to read canon, I would still go pick up those three books. What are they? They're Darth Bane, Rule of Two, and what was the third one? Dynasty of Evil. Dynasty of Evil. That's it. You're right. That's an amazing trilogy. Absolutely amazing trilogy of books. So they're definitely worth the read. That would actually answer a lot more. That's basically what Jay was talking about, where he had the thought bomb took out the Army of Light and the Brotherhood of Darkness. Just that guy, he's my absolute favorite Sith Lord. If they end up making that particular story canon, he's going to be by far my favorite character in canon. Absolutely by far. So thanks for sending in the question, Jody. Do appreciate it. And our final question this week, Jay doesn't want to touch with a 5-foot pole. It comes with Ronnie Black. And Ronnie Black says...
It wasn't addressed to me.
It wasn't. It was addressed at me. I'm under the gun.
I will honor the listener by respecting his wishes. He wanted to ask me that question, not me. So I'm going to sit back.
All right, here we go. This is going to be our last one for the week. Ronnie Black says, Brian, I've heard you say you felt like the Luke we get in the Mando is a perfect match to the Luke they shoved down our throats in The Last Jedi. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'd just like to hear you lay it out a little more and explain how you come to that conclusion. I love your show, and I hope to see you guys really make it in the fandom. Thank you, brother. I do appreciate the question, and I appreciate you directing it right at me and not just Jay, too. So yes, for those of you who have tuned in to my live hangouts or game night or anything like that, or I might have even said it on the podcast, there have been a couple times where I've mentioned that the Luke we got at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian, the Billy Badass Luke, matches the Luke we got in The Last Jedi. And I know a lot of people, I know there are two different Lukes, day and night, at their respective points. But I feel like the Luke, and I'm going to lay it out, and this is probably where a lot of people are going to get pissed off at me, and that's okay. I mean, if you guys disagree with me, let me know in the comment section. Oh my God, there's going to be so many comments on this episode. So, the Luke we got in The Last Jedi, I'll start at the back and work our way forward. The Luke we got in The Last Jedi was a broken Luke Skywalker who had achieved being the most powerful Jedi in the galaxy, who had defeated the Sith, who had helped bring balance to the Force at the time, right? Obviously, now it's Rey for some reason, but anyway, who had helped bring balance to the Force, even helped turn his father back to the light side. Like Rey said, Vader, the most hated man in the galaxy, Luke helped redeem him. And we see how far he's fallen. You know, Jay, you've talked about on this podcast how he's drinking from the teat of these whales, these beach whales that come up, and he's just drinking out of them. And he's showing Rey, do you really want this life? You know what I mean? Like, this is how far you've fallen. The reason I say these are the same two Lukes is that you see Billy Badass Luke, and you see Luke in The Mandalorian, and you see how powerful he is, and you see how wise he is, right? And you see what he's come off of from the end of Return of the Jedi and all this other stuff. When you fill in the gaps, because we don't know exactly everything that happened in between those two Luke Skywalkers, right? Those two versions of Luke Skywalker. We have the cliff notes, but we don't have all the details. We don't have everything that was going through Luke's head during all of it, everything. It makes total sense to me why Luke would end up where he was in The Last Jedi, because of how far from grace he fell. In my opinion, the more powerful you show him, around the time of The Mandalorian or Return of the Jedi, the more powerful you show him, the more it makes sense to me why he is the way he is in The Last Jedi, because the higher he flies, the further he has to fall. And it really shows what kind of an impact Ben's turn to the dark side had on him, and what all of that did to him, and how he felt like he betrayed Leia and Han. And because he said, Han was Han about it, but Leia, I let Leia down. It wasn't that Ben turned to the dark side. It was he let his sister down. And it's kind of like the story of Icarus's wings. You know what I mean? The closer to the sun he flew, the further he fell. And that's why I say those two Lukes match so perfectly, because of what we know what happened in between. Like I said, the cliff notes of what happened. We don't know exactly what happened, but we know those cliff notes. That's why I say, the higher you fly, the further from grace you fall. Jay, do you think I'm nuts?
No, we were talking about this last week, and I was talking as well to somebody in the YouTube comments on last week's show. What I want to see is, and I'm not the only one, solid Luke content
Yes.
that fills in the gaps.
Yes.
Content that you can emotionally connect to. Because if we can see, as you've just said, Luke continually rise, seeing that downfall, provided the emotional content is there, it would make that downfall seem natural. Because when you walk into the cinema, we haven't seen Luke since Return of the Jedi.
That's right.
In canon, there was nothing of Luke until we got to the new trilogy. There was no build up, no marketing for Luke in Force Awakens. It was the whole thing. Where's Luke? Luke was missing. We find him at the end. We waited. Some people have waited over 30 years for that one moment. They finally see him at the end. They then wait for the next movie, and it's not what anybody expected, which is always a trouble, always a problem if there's going to be a sequel with this gap, because you can't put 30 years of history in one movie.
That's
you just
right.
can't do it.
Yep.
If you try and do that, it's going to be watered down and pointless, and there's going to be nothing left for the rest of the movie. But it is a bitter pill to swallow when you see it, how far Luke has fallen, when we have no concept of why he's fallen. We have no attachment to Ben at this point. He's just he's just another character. We've not spent any prolonged time with Ben at that point when the film came out. So if we can get moving forward, that really good content that strikes you emotionally, much like we did with the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars had the same impact to a lot of people, specifically. And as I mentioned in the last week's show, I'm only speaking as myself from my generation, people who saw Star Wars before the prequels. I can't speak from somebody who saw the prequels first, because they've got a different perspective on it than I have. It's not a right or a wrong perspective. It is a right perspective. It's perfectly fine, and it's a right perspective, but it's a different perspective to mine. So for my generation, when a lot of them saw the prequels, it was such a contrast, specifically between episode 2 and 3, because of the jump in time from episode 1 to episode 2, episode 2 to episode 3. It was just the sharp contrast of different characters,
Right.
which jarred a lot of people. You then have the Clone Wars fill in that backstory. I've seen people who didn't care for the prequels. I've watched them watch the Clone Wars, watch Rebels, go back then, and then they've watched the final duel in Revenge of the Sith, and they've just cried. They cried because after 20 years, they watched the Clone Wars, and then they finally got that emotional content.
Yep.
And I think if we can get that solid emotional content that features Luke, ideally on screen. It needs to be on screen, this content.
Yes.
You can have comics and you can have novels, but it needs to be on screen.
I agree.
We can get that emotional content, much like WandaVision. One series is all it needs. We can have a couple of episodes where it's like they've done with Mandalorian. They can have somebody come in, play the body of Mark. You could recast if you wanted to. I personally don't want to recast, but ultimately it's money. Disney going to really spend the money on a CG character for 2 or 3 hours? It doesn't bother me the way it looks. It makes no difference to me because I know Mark Hamill is voice in it. I know for me it's still Luke Skywalker. But if they go with a recast, hey, whatever. Okay, it's a recast. And then you can much like WandaVision, each episode jumps forward a bit. You can see then all the students, more students coming in, build emotional content with Luke. By, say, episode 3, episode 4, bang, chuck Mark Hamill back on front of the camera. Dye his hair, dye his beard, make it nice and trim, very small beard, make him look a bit younger. And then say, right, Mark, moving forward now. And then eventually we get to Last Jedi, we see what happens, and everyone's heartbroken because they've seen the story. Not heartbroken because they don't understand the story.
Right. Yeah, no, that's exactly why I think, well, first off, you're right. We do need more content with Luke Skywalker and stuff that we can connect with. You're totally right. And like you said with Clone Wars, that's a perfect example of filling in that gap and making it make sense. And that's basically my defense on why those two. And honestly, the more they show us of Luke being a badass when he was younger, they said, the more tragic that fall is going to be. Because Luke even said it in Last Jedi. He goes, I was a legend. I was Luke Skywalker, a legend. And that's what we as an audience, the people that don't like what they did with Luke, that's what Luke, he's a legend to them. Those are the stories that they grew up with of him being a badass and all this stuff. And Luke realizing that he couldn't live up to that, that thought that everybody had of him, that image of him that they had. And I mean, honest to God, even though Luke was broken in The Last Jedi, look at what he turned around and did at the end of that film. He still came back and was Billy Badass Luke Skywalker again and did something that no Jedi in canon so far has ever been able to do. And I mean, even he being as powerful as he was, it still killed him, but he was still able to do it. That force projection, you know what I mean? So everybody wanted Luke to be this most powerful Jedi ever. They got it, and I guess people don't realize it. I don't want to say they don't realize it, but it's not in the form that they wanted. I think everybody wanted Luke running around with a lightsaber swinging it in The Last Jedi, and I think that's what everybody wanted, and that's not what we got. And in my opinion, what we got in The Last Jedi, not everything has to be flashy laser swords. It's him showing how powerful he was in the Force, even after being disconnected from it for 5-6 years, and he just comes back, jumps back on the bandwagon, and is able to do this again. Absolutely amazing, in my opinion. Absolutely love it. So I hope that answers your question, Ronnie. And for those of you who want to argue with me, you are more than welcome to do so. Please keep it civil, though. That's all I ask. Let me know in the comment section, what do you guys think? And I'm really looking forward to reading your comments on that, to be completely honest. So, Jay, was there anything else we needed to talk about this week?
There is one thing that I'd like to say.
Yeah.
First of all, we do have a Discord server. If you fancy it, jump in. It'd be great to speak to you more often, and also as well, potentially organize some gaming events. But today we had our very first squadrons flight. We had a nice little squad. We got myself, Cannon 1, Cannon 2, Hermitcraft, Cannon 3, I can't think of a name, Cannon 4, Vincent. We've got one spot left for first flights. Now, we do have our young man in reserve, currently stationed at home base, providing intel round the clock, Dark Lord of the Steph. His game copy comes in a few days, so if you want to jump in and be Cannon 5, jump in quick, because I want to run a lot more games with you guys. I want to talk to you. I want to get to know you, hear your experiences with Star Wars. If you don't want to play the games, that's cool. Jump in the Discord and just shoot me a message. Hit me up on the general chat. I'm here to talk to you 24/7.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, like Jay said, we've got a Discord server now. You guys are more than welcome to hop on, join, talk Star Wars with us. We've got channels for literally anything you could possibly want to talk about with Star Wars. Jay's done an amazing job setting that up and helping moderate it too, man. Doing a really great job on that. And I haven't really been active on the Discord lately. Like I said, my personal life's been hectic the last few weeks. With stuff from my day job and trying to keep going with the website and everything like that. So please forgive me, guys, for not being on there very often. I'm going to start doing better on that, I promise. So the link for that Discord server can be found in the description of this podcast. Make sure to check that out, guys. Hop in there and, like I said, talk whatever you guys want to talk about Star Wars-wise with us. If you guys want to get a question on the Star Wars Canon Podcast in the future, like I said earlier, you guys can email it to Star Wars Canon Podcast at gmail.com. That still gets me once in a while. You guys can send us a question that way, or on the Facebook page, or through Anchor. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so that you know when we upload an episode of Game Night, or if we go live for a hangout or anything like that. Definitely check that out also. So Jay, if we're not missing anything else, I think that's going to do it for the week.
Nice. Beam me up, Scotty.
Fair enough. All right, guys. Well, this is Brian and Jay signing off. And as always, guys, may the Force be with you.